What's up everybody, I'm HoopsandHipHop. So Pokémon is one of the few media franchises in the history of the world that has stood the test of time and maintained immense popularity despite being around for over 20 years. However, even though Pokemon's popular, it doesn't mean that it was never in danger of getting the axe and being ended altogether. There have been several times throughout Pokemon's history where it was in danger or likely in danger of being cancelled altogether, and in this video we are going to look at 5 of those moments in particular. So, without further ado, let's check it out. Now, these first couple are interesting because it wasn't an outside force that would have caused Pokemon to end in these particular instances, but rather Pokemon themselves. Pokemon was never expected to blow up like it did, and so, originally, the entire franchise was intended to only last through Generation 2. This can explain why the two generations are so closely connected, while Hoenn, the region of Generation 3, is almost completely unrelated because it was originally never planned. Obviously, Game Freak really had no choice but to keep making games because they had a cultural phenomenon on their hands, but it's still a bit unsettling to think how empty my childhood would have been without Pokemon being around the entire time. This next one is directly related to the first moment and deals specifically with the Pokemon anime. Since the franchise as a whole was only meant to last 2 generations, the anime was originally slated to only last 1, and end with Pokémon the first movie. There is an infamous alternate ending for the movie floating around the internet, which I won't be able to show here for copyright reasons, but it depicts an older version of Misty with a young girl who appears to be the daughter of Ash and Misty. It's speculated that this was going to be the original big climactic end for the anime because it would have wrapped things up quite well. Even though I'm sure we're all very glad that the anime has continued with new episodes to this day, I don't think anyone would necessarily be opposed to Ash and Misty getting together and having a child either, even if it meant ending that arc of the anime and continuing with new characters from that point on, similar to the way Digimon handled their show. Once again, it's a little bit unsettling to think what life would have been like without Pokemon. Next up is another anime-related instance, and while it's never been publicized that it could have ended Pokemon, it did damage that only a franchise like Pokemon could have survived. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm talking about Electric Soldier Porygon. At this point, pretty much everyone knows the story behind this episode, but as a quick summary, this episode has an instance of quick flashing lights, which caused over 700 Japanese people to suffer anything from vomiting to seizures, and this caused the anime to go on hiatus for 4 months. Now, like I said, it's never been mentioned that the anime, and by extension the franchise, was in any real danger of being discontinued. But if we do some quick analysis, we can realize that the fate of the franchise had to be at least a little bit up in the air after this happened. The reason for this is that if nearly any other series that was not as popular as Pokemon experienced this, it likely would have been too much to recover from. Pokemon was in the middle of creating a cultural phenomenon at the time this happened, so luckily for them, the money they stood to make after this tragedy was more than they lost because of it, so that's why they were able to continue. Most other franchises wouldn't have been able to accomplish this and likely would have been killed by the controversy. Luckily, however, Pokemon was popular enough to get out of this alive. The 4th entry on this list is one you might not even think about because it happened before Pokemon had even officially launched. At the time of its creation, Game Freak was just a fledgling development company that had only developed a small handful of titles, and Pokemon was by far the most intensive project that they had worked on. It took 6 years to finish, many of the employees quit, and worst of all, Game Freak almost went bankrupt because of it. It was only because another development company, Creatures Inc., agreed to fund the rest of the project in exchange for a 1/3 ownership of the franchise that it even saw its completion. Now, I'm sure you can all see how Pokemon could have never seen the light of day in this situation. With everything crumbling around him, it could have been easy for director Satoshi Tajiri to cut his losses and cancel the game, but thankfully he stayed true to his dream and saw it all the way through. However, even that wouldn't have been enough had it not been for Creatures stepping in to provide the rest of the funding. This couldn't have been an easy choice to make because it was a big risk. This wasn't a successful franchise like Mario or Zelda, so they really wouldn't have had any idea if it would do well. It would have been just as easy for them to play it safe and not provide the funding, which would have forced the Pokemon project, in all likelihood, to be shut down. Luckily, however, they took a chance, and as we all know, the entire world benefited because of it. And last but not least is another moment similar to number 3. While not confirmed to put Pokemon as a franchise in any real danger, this particular instance is something that only a franchise as popular as Pokemon could survive. So what am I referring to exactly? I'm referring to the time right in the middle of Generation 1, during the height of Pokemania, when Pokemon seemed to be riddled with controversy. There was the Jinx blackface fiasco, accusations of violence and animal cruelty, the Kadabra Uri Geller lawsuit, and the huge controversy surrounding Burger King's recall of their Pokeball toys, which culminated in two parents setting up a website called Pokemon Kills. It seems that whenever anything gets really popular, there are always people who either want to take advantage of that success or want to see it fail. And this community of people certainly took their best shot at Pokemon. Like I said, there isn't any direct evidence that it put Pokemon in danger, but it's fairly simple to figure out that a franchise that wasn't as popular couldn't have survived this massive onslaught, and it was most likely thanks to Pokemon's sheer popularity that it was able to survive, and thank goodness that it did. And those were 5 times that Pokemon almost ended. Sadly, Pokemon's history hasn't been quite as carefree as it might have deserved. However, as I mentioned a couple times in the video, it was thanks to the amazing support of the fanbase that it was able to push through those hard times and thankfully come out looking better than ever. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like and leave a comment down below, as it really helps to support the video here on YouTube. If you enjoyed the video and you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button because I upload great Pokemon content every Tuesday and Saturday. Anyways, with all of that being said, I will be back with another video soon, and as always, I'll smell you guys later.